Alright, here are notes about bacterial reproduction and resistance. These notes were synthesized from a TED Talk by Dr. Carl Klose. So the first thing we'll talk about is bacteria can grow anywhere. Literally oxygen, no oxygen, doesn't matter. There's aerobic and anaerobic bacteria. In the coldest places on Earth and the hottest places on Earth, you can find bacteria. On the surface of our skin, in our intestines, bacteria is everywhere. There are actually more bacterial cells in humans than there are human cells. So technically speaking, cell by cell, you are more bacteria than you are human at any given time. There are 10,000 different types of bacteria in our bodies alone. And the bacteria can share genes with each other, and this aids in antibiotic resistance. Remember that you can pause these notes at any point in time to catch up. And there are 3 ways bacteria can share genes. They can eat other dead bacteria. They can get genetic information from other bacteria that's transferred by viruses. And they can do something called bacterial conjugation, which is basically sex because it's an exchange of genetic material, and they use their pili and fimbriae. Pili and fimbriae are from the notes on bacterial structure. If you haven't watched those, be sure you see those after these. Alright, so here's just a synopsis of what we just learned about how bacteria can exchange DNA, and we go in a little more detail. So from other bacteria, this is like you going to the funeral of a blue-eyed person, eating a part of them, and then you have blue eyes. It doesn't work with human beings, it does work with bacteria. This is actually how tetracycline immunity is passed from bacteria to bacteria. Tetracycline is a common antibiotic for acne. They can get it from other viruses. This is like you catching the flu from a blue-eyed person and all of a sudden you have blue eyes. Doesn't happen in humans, happens really easily in viruses. Methicillin resistance is passed this way. Methicillin is the antibiotic that is used to treat staph infections. MRSA is a particularly scary form of staph. It's methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. So, it's a resistant bacteria to methicillin. And the third way is from bacterial conjugation. That is like you having sex with a blue-eyed person and you getting blue eyes. Doesn't happen in people, happens very readily in bacteria. Vancomycin resistance is passed this way, through this bacterial conjugation. Vancomycin is a step above methicillin. So VRSA is an even scarier form of MRSA, because it means that not only has methicillin failed, but vancomycin has failed as well in treating this particular staph infection. Alright, that's how bacteria share their genetic information. Now we're going to talk about how they resist antibiotics. So, bacterial resistance. This can be passed from bacteria to bacteria, and this is just a synopsis of the last few slides, through the eating of dead bacteria, through viruses, and through bacterial conjugation. A way to think about that, it is like bacteria having sex. Antibiotics work via a lock and key system, with the specific target being the lock and the antibiotic being the key. So that means that antibiotics use very specific device in a very specific way to kill bacteria. If you look over here, this is how tumblers in a lock work. The different ridges in the key make these match up perfectly, these tumblers, so that they form a straight line so that the key can be turned. Without the right key, the lock won't open. The same is true for killing bacteria. Once an antibiotic is developed, it finds a particular way of killing a bacteria, and it works until that bacteria develops a resistance. And bacteria can fight antibiotics and this lock and key system in 3 ways. The first way is called the upchuck method. At least that's what Dr. Klose calls it. Bacteria create a mechanism where when an antibiotic enters the bacteria looking for the lock, before it can find the lock, the bacteria throws it up. What's really happening is that the bacteria senses the presence of the antibiotic and creates a chemical gradient that pushes the antibiotic back out of the bacteria, but we can just think of it as the bacteria throwing it up. And that little image will help you remember forever. Tetracycline is resisted this way. So tetracycline is resisted through the upchuck method. Next is called stealth mode. The bacteria alters the lock just enough where the antibiotic is no longer the key needed to kill it. And streptomycin is resisted this way. Streptomycin, if you've ever had strep throat, it sounds like that because the antibiotic is named for the particular bacteria that it kills, strep. This does not occur through the deliberate act of bacteria. The changing of the lock just occurs by random mutation of the bacteria. And if it mutates just right, the key will no longer fit the lock, meaning the antibiotic will no longer kill the bacteria in that specific way, and the bacteria will live. The last one is the ballistic missile defense. This is where bacteria send out chemical receptors, or toxins, to kill the antibiotic before it reaches the bacteria. And penicillin is resisted this way. Those are the notes on bacterial reproduction and resistance to antibiotics. Come in, ask questions if you have any.